Hi, and welcome to episode 2. This is how to get all the stuff that's in your yard into your compost pile. You might think, I've got a lot of crap in my yard. How do I get that into my compost pile in a productive way? Well, let's take a look, shall we? This is the source for most of the material that I have in my compost pile, especially at the moment. It's my front yard. As you can see, it's just been raked. Seeing how it's almost wintertime, all the leaves are falling here in downtown Tracy. In the most strips, and a lot of this town, seeing how it's a mature neighborhood, there's a lot of these Modesto ash trees that have lots and lots and lots and lots of little leaves. And what happens is the city of Tracy will either pick those up, you can put them in a pile and they'll pick them up, or what I've chosen to do is to put these in my compost pile and see how really good of a compost I can make out of those. So if you see, as we pan over, you can see the new stuff and the old stuff. The stuff in the foreground is the new pile. The stuff in the background is the stuff that's been composting for a little bit. And to get it in, it's almost like the turning process that we saw in episode 1, except you have to integrate a whole new pile of stuff. And you can do, if you choose to, put all of the new stuff in a pile and then pile all the old stuff onto the new stuff. I've done that before. What happens is you get this little pocket of stuff that's at a different maturation process than the rest of the compost pile. I think that part of the goal should be to get it all to come to the same finish line at the same time. It's kind of like cooking in a restaurant in some aspects, and that you want it to get all done at the same time so you can pull it out. Especially with you're dealing with leaves during the fall and wintertime. Well, wintertime here at Tracy. So you'll notice the fork will clog up a little bit more. That's normal. As the pile starts to disintegrate, the fork will get more clogged because it'll go through stuff more easily. Lots and lots of steam. It's actually a colder day here in Tracy, and if you notice, I'm not putting water on it this time. When I turned this pile a couple of days ago, I did wet it down, and I added even more leaves into it at that point. And I wet it down quite a bit, and I took the temperature of the pile, and it temped out at about 120 degrees, which is like a nice warm shower. So it is still producing quite a bit of heat, and if I need to, the next time I turn it, I think it needs a little bit more moisture, if it's not working as hard as I think it can be, then I'll go ahead and add some water. That's not a big deal. Remember that the end game in all of this is to get compost. It's not a quick process. It's not really a difficult process. It just takes time. There was a little bit of a smell, but not necessarily a bad smell. It wasn't like if you got the pile too wet, it didn't start to smell like a swamp, which it can. It had a smell like an actively working compost pile, which is a good thing. More steam came off that day because it was colder, about in the mid-50s, I think, as opposed to in episode 1 where it was probably in the mid-60s. So, lots more steam. That just tells me that it's working right. Part of the thing with having a pile this big is that if you pile all the leaves up on the top, they have a tendency to float down, and it gets frustrating because it's like, walking up a sand dune. So what I do every now and again is I kind of squish the top down, and that makes a little ledge, a little platform to put more leaves on top. My theory is to pile it up as high as I can, and to get the pile as cylindrical as I can get it. That seems to be the optimal shape. And if you buy some kind of structure to put your compost in, a lot of them are either in cubes or in cylinders. You can get cylinder shapes. Sometimes you get pieces of wood. That's like an old fence board. And that will actually break down over time. I choose not to, but sometimes it kind of creeps in. This pile was steaming pretty much the whole pile. There were little pockets that weren't steaming, but by and large, from the top of the pile to the bottom of the pile, it was actively composting and actively steaming. So, if you notice, the height of the pile is quite tall,
it's actually going to get a little bit higher than the hatchet, which hasn't moved in a couple of weeks. So here's near the end. I switched to the shovel, getting everything in the pile, and the whole ground was kind of wet and moist, so I didn't really scrape out a whole lot. I could have scraped out more than I did, but this is not all that different than episode 1. Here's the finished pile, and I try to keep it as concise as I can. Raked it up, make it look pretty, make it look like it's supposed to be there. You notice the height of the pile is actually above the height of the hatchet that's embedded in the tree. And we'll take a look at it in a little bit. Like now. That's quite a bit difference in just a day. That's less than 24 hours difference. And it's gone down 3/4 of a foot. So that'll tell you how much this is actively composting. And a lot of that is just air. A lot of the fluffy leaves are compressing down. And where contact is made, that's when compost happens. So we'll see you next time on the Composting Saga.